Hello, hello. I'm early. Let's see if we can get our special guest. Is that our special guest right there? Justin.
There, have you got me? Can you hear and see me?
I can hear you. Maybe it's really dark where you're at.
No, all my lights are on. So
Let's see.
yeah, it says my camera's going. Oh, there we go.
I
There
see
we go.
it.
That does it.
What's up, man? How are you?
What's going on? How you doing?
Doing all right. I lost out on that auction.
Did you? What ended up going for?
420.
Really?
Ha ha ha. Yeah, I went for 420.
I don't think you wanted it at that price anyway, to be honest. With some of the questions behind it, I'd rather have you can get if you want to go up that high, you can probably get a decent looking 1.5.
Yeah, it's funny. I looked at it way too much today, and I think I figured out why it was an authentic. I think the front of it had like an eraser mark on it, like they erased. Yeah, it looked good otherwise, but I can get a number grade for around the same price, maybe a little more. So
you pay less for a number grade. To be perfectly honest.
So I'm totally cool with that. It's fine. Like whatever.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, that's probably actually a little bit better because you can. They don't come up all the time, but they're not super rare either. So there'll be another one.
Yeah, I mean, there's like 300 of them in the pop. I mean, not the most common card, but not impossible. So I'll wait.
Yeah.
Oh, it gives me more money for Atlanta cards.
Dude, those player runs you're putting together are sensational, man. I love those.
Dude, it sucks though because I'm like, man, those cards are cool. Like today, I'm looking at Roger Staubach cards just because I'm bored. And I'm like, man, Staubach has some good-looking cards. Let's see how much these are.
They're cheap. Does have some good-looking cards. Yeah, when you get into the 70s, it starts to get real cheap over there.
What's that?
When you get into the 70s, it starts to get real cheap in vintage football, even for rookies.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I don't know. It blows my mind how cheap football is.
It's amazing, and I'm sure that's one of the things we're going to talk about today too. Is just like, what a deal it is to be able to get in on some of this iconic stuff for cheap.
Yeah, for sure. Like,
I'm getting my top 10 around right now.
I've got 10 football and 2 wild cards I'm going to bring up, but for the sake of discussion, like, how long have you been doing vintage football, and like, what kind of drove you there?
So for me, I guess I'll go long story short a little bit. Vintage football has really been my focus since 2022. I got back into collecting in 2018, and it was actually a football card that got me back into it. A good friend of mine who we now call the Godfather, because he got me back into collecting, and then I got a bunch of other guys back into it. So we kind of, when our wives get upset about it, we all walk them back to my buddy Jason and say, look, don't yell at us, yell at Jason. He's the one who started all this. He gave me an 89 tops traded Barry Sanders. $10 card or something, right? You see the Lions shirt on him, a huge Lions fan. So it $5-10 card maybe, but man, that clicked something over. So but it was kind of a slow burn getting back into it because I got married in 2019, bought a house in 2021. So, you know, in terms of money to put into the hobby, it was kind of 2021 where I started to really be able to buy some big cards, and kind of started out collecting like I did when I was a kid, where it's like, who do I like now? You know, what's, you know, and then some of the nostalgic stuff, like, you know, I picked up like a Jerry Rice rookie card and, you know, some more
Yep.
Barry Sanders stuff and everything. But the first vintage football card I actually bought was when I got COVID. Because I was cooped up in my room like Quasimodo, so I didn't have anything else to do but sit around on eBay and ComC. So I bought way too many
Right.
cards. But for whatever reason, I saw an Earl Campbell card, you know, and I'm like, that looks awesome. I want to own that card. So I bought, I thought at the time when I bought this was going to be about an 8. Turned out it graded a 6. I still have no idea why. I've looked it over a million different ways, but that was the card that got me back into it. So yeah, that one card. And once I bought that card, it was like, this is where I think I want to be, is going backward, and started just working backward, and little by little. Started out, it was vintage football and basketball, but I went to a show, I guess, toward the end of 2022, and there was this guy there. If you ever go to any, I don't know if you've ever been to the National or any big shows like that. If you ever go, he's the guy who's got all the vintage football cards. He's an old guy, and I had some interaction with him, and I saw his table. I'm like, this is what I want. This is the collection I want. It's the most amazing vintage football collection you're ever going to see. So that kind of got me just zeroed in on vintage football, and that's still, I'd say, about 75-80% of my collection. I also do still the modern football, like 90s football in particular, a lot of Lion stuff, Barry Sanders. I have some autos of legends, and then vintage boxing is about 10% of my collection or so. But vintage football is really like the meat of it that I still like to go after.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I kind of remember, you know, like as a kid, that the '89 Topps traded Barry Sanders. Well, the score was like the big one, but
Yeah,
that '89 Topps traded Sanders, like, because I'm originally from southeastern Michigan, so
really, I didn't
yeah,
know that.
yeah. So Barry Sanders is all the rage, you know, obviously, and my wife's still a Lions fan, but yeah, those cards, it's kind of the same path, you know. The one that really got me, you know, when I started getting into this around the same time you did, a couple years ago, 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I was at a show and I had this modern baseball with me that I was just trying to get rid of. Like, I wasn't, and I ended up trading a couple autographs for my first vintage football card I got, which is the Terry Bradshaw rookie.
Oh, nice. That's what to get.
It's a PSA 6. It's beautiful. And I'm like, I can trade these two for that. Yeah, I want to do that. Let's do that. So, and then I started looking at prices of other guys. I'm like, holy crap, this is totally the arena I want to play in. Because everybody does baseball, and that's cool. You know, I have some too, and I love vintage baseball, but there's something about the vintage football arena that I just like it. Maybe it's because it's less competitive. I'm not bidding against, you know, 50 people on one card and 5 people. But yeah, I love it. It's become, as the player run thing is really kicking me right now, because I go down these rabbit holes like, oh my, look at how cool.
I'm loving those videos though. The player run videos, the ones you put up there, that Blanda run where he has 47 cards or something.
What am I doing? I went out to lunch with my dad today. I'm like, why the hell am I doing a Blanda run? It's 26 cards.
Because all 26 of them are probably really affordable. I mean, I think I have his rookie in a PSA 3, and I got that for, under $100, maybe $80, something like that. And I mean, that's just crazy.
And you know, I was texting you earlier about, I started thinking about this a little more. Like, I'm wondering, you know, people are stats people, right? They look at stats, they look at numbers, and I think people are looking at numbers of quarterbacks and wide receivers, those two positions specifically, and the numbers don't jump off the page, right? But I don't think they're understanding that the rules were different in the 50s, 60s, 70s, where defensive backs could pretty much maul a receiver off the line. And prohibit them from running a route.
Yeah. Well, and that's, one of the things, if you listen to a lot of vintage baseball channels, they talk about this, where because the rules of baseball have remained consistent over the course of time, pretty consistent anyway. I think this year we had a couple big rule changes, with the stolen base stuff, and then recently the pitch clock and everything. But for the most part, baseball is pretty much, a lot of the, guys say it's the same game it was, 100 some years ago, which allows records to stand a little longer. Football, and I think this was kind of what I said to you, is that, every change made in the last 60 years has been aimed at more points being scored. And the biggest one of those, I promise I won't drone on about it, but the Mel Blount rule, that was 77, when all of a sudden, corners, defensive backs in general couldn't hit receivers for more than 5 yards down the field. And that really, the way
he was notorious for just dropping a receiver at the line of scrimmage, right?
He would, but then he just ride him the whole way down. But it wasn't just Mel Blount,
right?
He
would ride him all the way down the field.
These guys, right? A lot of these guys would do that. That's just how defense was played. So that's why, when you look at numbers, right, like to me, and we're going to talk about this guy a little bit more later. I know that for a fact. Sammy Baugh. When you talk about guys like Tom Brady, and my brother will make fun of me if he watches this, because I'm always going on about Sammy Baugh, because to me, Sammy Baugh is the guy that all of these modern passing quarterbacks go back to, because he was the first one that could really throw it around. But if you look at his stats, he'd be in the bottom third of the league, on a yearly basis for, his passing yards and touchdowns. And it's just because the game was so different, and the innovation just wasn't there too. And that was partially because of the rules, and partially just because as time goes on, things progress, right? But the innovation in offense just wasn't there the way it is now.
Correct. Yeah, 100%. And, if you completed 50% of your passes, that was really good. I think in history, Sonny Jurgensen's been known as one of the most accurate passes of all time. He led the league with like a 54% completion percentage one year. Like, that was great. That's just how the game was played.
That's a backup now. That is not even a starter. That's a backup.
Yeah, you're trash now. Like, right? Yeah. You're Joey Harrington.
But that one hits very close to home. That one hits very close to home. You had to go with Harrington. Nobody else. We had to go with Harrington. Or Orlovsky or any Scott Mitchell. But yeah, and I think though, that context matters a ton, but it's also, I think, what helps keep one of the reasons vintage football stays a little bit cheaper. And the fact that I saw, I think it was actually maybe John Mangini who did kind of a discussion about vintage football versus vintage baseball cards, and talked about the reasons why vintage baseball would kind of always be king. And one of the things he pointed out that I hadn't really thought of, but it was a really good point, is the fact that vintage baseball, like baseball in general, does a better job celebrating its history. You don't see as much, except for maybe a couple years ago when it was the 100th anniversary of the NFL. You don't see as much of pro football kind of, parading out its legends and celebrating kind of the past and whatnot. I think that goes hand in hand with what we said. It's because a lot of these guys, their records have long been broken, but still, like, I think football can do a better job of keeping those guys front and center. But maybe it's a good thing they don't, because our cards are more affordable because of it.
No, you're 100. John said that. He's 100% right. I think the NFL sucks at promoting its past. I don't know why they don't celebrate it more. They used to have, like, ESPN used to have like ESPN Classic, and they'd show all these classic games. I'm going back like 25, 30 years, but
NFL films, I remember. That's what I'd watch when I stayed home from school. We're in the same age demographic, pretty close anyway.
Yeah. They don't do that anymore. Anything they show on like NFL Network's a game from like 5 years ago at the most. Yeah. It's like they just suck at teaching the game where it came from, celebrating its original stars,
Yeah.
I would venture to guess that most people don't know Sammy Baugh or Otto Graham or Sid Luckman or Dutch Clark,
Definitely not.
People do not know who they are.
Yeah. Well, and that's a shame, but it's also what keeps vintage football so affordable. And, that's one of the things that really, again, football was actually, when I stopped collecting as a kid, it was around 1998, 99. And, football had become my favorite sport somewhere in the mid 90s. And I kind of left off as a football collector, so, 98 was a great year for football cards, of course, Peyton Manning, Randy Moss, Charles Woodson, that rookie
Yeah.
class, a lot of great sets that year. But I'm lucky that football is actually my favorite sport objectively, but it's also, I think, the sport of kind of the big three: baseball, basketball, and football, where you can build a really iconic collection. And to me, that matters. There's kind of three prongs in my collection: iconic, rare, and nostalgic. And if you're talking about iconic, and we're going to show some cards later, obviously, I think a lot of the stuff we're going to show it's going to be some really iconic cards. And if you look at the counterpart, like what it would cost to get somebody of the equivalent in baseball, it's like, I mean, literally pennies on the dollar. And so if and luckily for me, again, I'm not a big baseball guy anyway, but even if the two sports were equal to me, it's like, okay, which sport can I build the more iconic collection in on my budget, right? Like, I don't have, hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend on cards. So on my budget, I can build a football collection where it's like, I have just about every iconic card out there. Is it in high grade? No, but I own it. I could not say that in baseball. Absolutely not.
Right. I agree 100%. Yeah. I think that's why I love it so much, because, you've done the Hall of Fame rookie card run. I'm working on it, and it's outside of the Nagurski. It's totally attainable. Whereas you look at baseball, you've got the Honus Wagner, the Ty Cobbs, the Mickey Mantles. Like it's tough, right?
Yeah.
Football's attainable outside of one guy.
Yeah. That Nagurski, if we have people watching that aren't huge football collectors, that's really, I think that's our grail card in vintage football, 35 Chickle Nagurski, probably run you a good solid 10 to 12 grand for like a PSA or SGC one, which is, obviously a big time card, but what's the next most expensive? It's got to be, the Namath or the Grange or the Thorpe, and, the Namath in we'll talk more about those a little bit later. I presume I'm going to show a couple of them, but only a couple of those are even going to run you above $1,000. To get a nice copy of even some of the more iconic stuff, you can sit in that, $500 to $800 range.
Yep. Yeah. It's more about them coming for sale than affordability, really. You can get a PSA 1 Thorpe for, $1,000, a little over $1,000. The Namath a big boy.
Yeah.
That's a big boy. And I know you and I have talked about, it's kind of funny how that's like, I think it's the 52 mantle of football. I really do.
I agree.
He's a New York guy. He's an iconic player, all that. It's just the parallels are sort of crazy in a way. But, the Jim Brown rookie there's dozens of them on eBay right now. Mm-hmm. It's not hard to get,
No.
It's your Sport Kings, your Schickles, and outside of that, it's all about how much money you got, right? And
but there's just some great cards to be had at very good prices. You talk about, and this is something, I popped on another buddy's channel called Global Card Collectors a while back, and they had me and another guy on to talk about vintage football collecting on a budget. And just going through and seeing some of the stuff you can pick up for like 30, 40, $50. You can get a Deacon Jones rookie in a nice mid-grade for $50. And it's like, show me the equivalent in another sport, right? And in baseball, you're certainly not going to be spending only $50. And there's some beautiful football cards out there too.
Oh, I know.
Really. This is not one of my top 10, but I'll throw something up there. This Marion Mountain, you have a real nice copy of that, but this was the first 50 Bowman I had on the top of a pile over here. And just that set is so gorgeous, along with 51 Bowman and 52 Bowman. But this, in a 2, this is $120, and it's like for a guy who, by the way, was one of the 4 guys to break the color barrier in pro football in 1946. So you have a very historically significant guy, beautiful football card, rookie card, by the way, Hall of Famer. $120 to get that in a really well centered too.
And there's an example of the NFL not promoting that nearly well enough, because most people don't know that there were 4 guys, that came out. He was one. Kenny Washington was another one.
Yeah.
So they're terrible at that. But Motley, oftentimes is referred to as the best running back of all time, but that's debatable.
Like 7.2 yards a carry or something like that.
Yeah,
Ridiculous for a season or something.
That's like video numbers, really.
Yeah, I mean, he was a moose. He was like, like what, 6'3", 260 or something, just mauling people. I mean, watch some highlights of him if they're still out there on YouTube, but it's impressive. But you mentioned Kenny Washington. Do you happen to have either, because Kenny Washington was actually the guy who officially broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball. Also, he played, it was either, I think he played Jackie Robinson played football with him at UCLA, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, I think that's
They were together at UCLA, and I think they played football together. And this was, almost a year before Jackie Robinson did it in baseball. But how often do you hear anybody talk about Kenny Washington? He's got two great cards, by the way. His 48 Leaf and his 48 Bowman. I have the Bowman. The Leaf is on my want list and has been for a while.
I have on my want list the 48 Leaf white letter. Yeah. I'd love a Chuck Bednarik white background, but
there's one on eBay right now for about $30,000.
Yeah, there's like 5 of those in the world or something ridiculous. Yeah. It's very hard. His regular card's very hard. So.
Yeah, so 48 Leaf, a lot like, just, in case anybody's kind of new to that set, a lot like in baseball, you have a lot of different backgrounds, you have different pants colors, you have different lettering. It's a really cool set, and of course the price of the card depends on the scarcity of the version you have. I have a ton of 48 Leafs. They're almost all the most common versions of the card, but there's a couple in that set, a couple short prints. I know at least we're going to talk about one of them. You mentioned the Bednarik. I know we'll talk about that a little more, but also Leo Nomolini. And those are two of the cards that when people tell me they're looking to pick up a 48 Leaf Bednarik or a 48 Leaf Nomolini, it kind of tells me, it's like, okay, you're someone who's done a bit of research on vintage football and know those are big cards in our hobby.
Yeah. I haven't seen a Nomolini pop up for sale, at least on eBay, in a long time. It's been a while.
I saw somebody, maybe a little, maybe over a year ago or something, maybe. I think I pulled mine out here. I should have brought that one down. If I didn't, it's a travesty. Do you have that one?
No, I'm missing quite a few key cards, unfortunately. Today was going to be my first Schickel card, and I got punked on that, but that's okay.
That's okay.
It's a slow roll, so I've got a lot of great cards that I'm happy with. There's a lot I wish I had, but it's all good.
Well, having seen your collection, you have a lot of these cards in some pretty darn nice grades too. For example, where I have that Motley in a 2, I've seen yours in a 5. And I saw that, I'm like, holy cow, that's gorgeous.
The only reason that's a 5 is because I traded for it at the show 2 weeks ago, and it was a bunch of actually, I had a 63 Topps Jim Brown, my only Jim Brown I had. It was in a 3.5. It was clean. The edges are clean. I traded that and some other stuff, and I'm like, I really want the Motley. I love that card, and I'll get around to Jim Brown. You know what I mean? So, that's the reason I was able to attain my Motley in that grade.
That was of all the cards I've seen you show, that's the one that made me the most like, holy, because I love that card. That is one of I think that's a horribly underrated, undervalued card, and it's a beautiful card. I thought your copy, when I saw that, I'm like, that is just one of the best copies I've seen of that card.
Yeah, there's so many. You and I could probably run through dozens of underrated cards in the hobby. There's just so many of them in football. The Motley's right up there. Shoot, all the rookies in that set are beautiful. That set is just like I've said before. Today it's my number one. It's that or the 51 Bowman, just in terms of looks. But in terms of looks, star power, the 50 Bowman is probably the best vintage football set there is, honestly.
100%. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, that's been my sort of like 3 through 5 varies depending on what day you ask me. But my 1 and 2, 50 Bowman and 48 Leaf, yeah, are very, very consistent. 50 Bowman is my all-time favorite set. And, you know, to me, there's kind of like the big 3 cards in that set. There's the Autogram, there's the Marion Motley, and then the Y.A. Tittle. And I rank them in that order. I know that I think most people I found out kind of put the Tittle there. I posted something on IG a while back, and I remember you were a Motley guy too, if I remember right, putting that at number 2. But the Tittle's a great card too. I actually happened to get my copy of that one down. It is a beautiful, beautiful card.
That's beautiful, yeah.
But yeah, I love that whole set, and even some of the lower tier rookies, right? Like Lou Rose is in that set. Tony Canadeo, who was a great player for the Packers. Max Speedy.
Yeah, the Max Speedy is it's like him and Blue Sky, and there's something great about it. Like it's just so simple, it's beautiful, you know.
Yeah. 100%. And I don't have any 51 Bowmans down, but I'm guessing you'll probably show some maybe in a bit.
My 10 are, I don't think I might have the, I
do have one.
I have one.
I have Tom Landry. So.
Yeah, I've got the Dutchman.
Oh, there we go.
And I busted this out because it's graded a 2. And I paid a hill of beans for this because it's a 2, but at arm's length, it looks like a 7. It's just, I love cards like that. That, you know, at arm's length. If I have to squint, especially as I'm getting older, if I have to squint and I can't see the flaw, then hell, I'm cool with that. You know, I'll take the discount.
And I mean, for me, I am not, you know, there's certain cards, right, that I want to have in a certain quality because they're special to me. Yeah. But man, one of the ways I save money in the hobby, right, because the goal in the hobby for me is twofold. Again, collect a bunch of really nice cards that I enjoy looking at and not let it lead me to getting divorced. So in order to achieve that second goal, the way in which I try to save a little bit of money is I'll buy low graded stuff. I'm, you know, especially the further back it goes, you know, I'm not going to buy, you know, if I'm into my 90s stuff, I'm not going to buy a SGC2 of a, you know, Barry Sanders refractor or something, but I'm more than happy. I actually found the Nomalini, and you can see there, it's a beater. It's an SGC1. It's got some decent color. I love the card. It's way off center. It's got, like, you know, some creasing and stuff, but you know what? I paid under $300 for this thing. I'm good with it.
You own it, you know?
Yeah.
When there's some of those cards, especially in 48 Leaf, then when you go back, that you can't be picky. Either they don't come up very often, or if they do and they're high item, they're going to go for a lot of money. So
a lot of money.
I'm not going to be picky on certain cards. Like, you know, today I was really hoping to get that Hinkle, but I'm not going to go nuts. You know, I can be patient about it. Like, that'll come up again. Nomalini, if that was a Nomalini, I would have went way above what I normally would have, just because they're not for sale.
You don't see them. Yeah. Like we said, the Nomalini and the Bednarik, the two Hall of Fame rookies from that 48 Leaf set. Those are the 2 short print Hall of Fame rookies. Yep. And, you know, a really smart vintage collector who'd been in the game a while told me early on, you know, if you see one of those, you buy one of those, because you don't know when you're going to see one again. You don't know, because they are scarce. And that's one thing that I think your channel does an awesome job of highlighting is, you know, and I knew this was true, but you've really shown me the degree to which it's true, is just the discrepancy in pop reports between football and baseball. Given the price differential, you'd think that baseball was infinitely more scarce, but actually it's the other way around. Like, football is very, very scarce. So, you know, at least relatively speaking, right? I mean, like, not every card is scarce, but, you know, if you look at counterparts and kind of try to, you know, like, for example, like the Mantle versus the Namath is more scarce. I looked once at the difference between the Grange 33 Sport Kings and like the Babe Ruth in that set, and it's like not even close how much more graded the Ruth was. So actually, when you get into this, like, you highlight that really well, just the disparity between football and baseball and pop reports. Oh, there you go.
This is one of my 10 I busted out. This is a a PSA 1, and I don't know why. I quite honestly don't care.
I think we're twins here, actually. That's my PSA 1 Grange as well. And it is also amongst my top 10. Yeah, love that card. Love it.
Card is beautiful. It's in my top 5, honestly. But yeah.
Same. Yep. I'm curious to see I'm curious to see how much overlap we do have when we do bust out the top 10, because I am certain that we're going to have a lot of the same cards. I'm just curious the order.
I kind of went with not so much, I guess. I didn't go with price. I don't know how you did it. I didn't really go all in on like what's most expensive. I went in on what are my favorite like high eye appeal cards I have.
I just went with what I like the best, and I'll tell you what, I'm probably, if we have some vintage football collectors watching here, there's probably going to be some folks, throwing stuff at the screen when they see where I rank some of these, but emphasis on, and this is the same way I do things every year. Like on my IG, I go through and, I rank my top cards I pick up every year. And it's like, I make very clear, I rank these based on how much I like them. What determines how much I like them? A variety of factors: the eye appeal, the grade, the person on the card itself, right? Because, take that 65 Namath. It's not so much that I'm a huge Joe Namath fan, but boy, do I love the look of that card. And I don't, this probably sounds like I'm getting too I don't know, sentimental or, whatever about a piece of cardboard, but that card radiates history to me, because when you think of Namath and you think of what he did, you don't have professional football as it is today without Joe Namath, and guys like that matter to me.
Yeah. I've seen comments like Joe Namath sucked. Look at his numbers. I'm like, Joe Namath made the NFL what it is today. They would have merged, but they would not have merged as quickly as they did had he not done what he did in that Super Bowl, that championship game. So the story of professional football is vastly different without Joe Namath. And there's only a handful of guys that you can sit there and look at and say, okay, they are equivalent to Joe Namath in their impact on the history of professional football. Whether you like Namath, I know he was a controversial guy. I know, post-career, he had some awkward moments where he messed up the Super Bowl coin toss and tried to kiss Susie Colbert. And it's a shame. It's really a shame that that's what a lot of people are going to remember, is him trying to, he's hammered on TV trying to kiss Susie Colbert. It
wasn't a good look, but nonetheless, that doesn't have anything to do with his impact on the game.
I remember watching that. I'm like, because I think the Jets had like a 30th anniversary celebration that day, and they'd been drinking all day. ESPN damn well knew what they were doing, because they've been partying hard all day, and they go to Joe Namath knowing who he is. Anyway, I love Namath, the guy. He's changed his life a lot.
That's true. Yeah, that was kind of, I do know that was like a way. And look, that's what it's all about, right? Like, none of us have a completely clean slate. Everybody, makes mistakes, and watching somebody kind of take on, the effort to improve themselves and everything, which is what Namath did after that. And again, even if we wipe all that out, right, it's not like an O.J. Simpson case where there's something where it's like, okay, this may have to impact how we view him as a player. With Namath, to me, it's like, okay, nothing he did was so egregious where it makes us go back and say, all right, we should downgrade what he did in terms of the history of pro football.
No, he got drunk, made a bad decision. I know I've done that in my life. Crap happens, but I implore anybody watching this to watch some videos of Namath, career videos, and retrospective videos on his life, because he's, the Susie Colbert thing aside, he's a good dude. He's a really good guy. You can poop on his stats all you want. The guy changed the game single-handedly.
Yeah,
the guarantee. It's up there with Babe Ruth calling a shot. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, again, that was a huge seminal moment in the history of professional football. So when you talk about, our hobby, it's like, right, like that card, to me, and I know some people dismiss it because of the guy, but that card it's up there. how high you rank it. For me, the player does factor in a bit, and I rank it lower than some people would, but it is unquestionably, you got to put it in there as a top 10 card.
Yep. It's in my top 5 just because I remember as a kid, I thought, man, I would love to own that someday, but I probably never will. When I was a kid, eBay didn't exist. Hell, the internet didn't exist yet. So we were stuck with what we would find at card shows, and they never showed up. You never saw these at card shows. And if you did, they were super expensive. I had a paper route and I worked at Hardee's. Like, I'm not going to be able to afford
Right.
the Namath rookie, I'm dumpster diving for I don't know, Todd Marinovich rookies.
Now you're dusting off some names from the past there.
Yeah. My brother was a Raider fan, so I tend to bust out Todd Marinovich quite a bit just to.
You might be the only person who does. I've got to tell you, you're single-handedly keeping his memory alive.
Yeah, I'm aging myself too, but whatever. It's all good.
I got lucky finally last year. That Namath had been on my want list for quite some time as well. And last year, I actually, in a Facebook group, a guy had one for sale, and I'd actually talked to him about a year earlier about a deal for a Namath, and it just wasn't the right time to pull the trigger on it. Last year, circumstances were right for it. And I got a pretty good deal on the one I have. I mean, I ended up paying $1,200 for it, but I'll show you the copy. And I mean, it's in an SGC 1.5. It looks pretty darn good. There's some staining on the back, but other than that, I mean, similar copies are selling for closer to 16, 17 right now. So
yeah, let's see that. I want to see yours.
All right, yeah, I'll show Broadway Joe right here. I got him handy. All right, there we are. There it is. That's my Namath.
Yeah, it's such a. So, is it true that he's leaning on a crutch in that picture?
I've heard that. I've heard all sorts of narratives about this card that, he was sick that day. He was leaning on a crutch. I have no idea, but I've heard that too. If you look at the back, you can see a little bit of the staining is why it's a 1.5. But if you just look at the front, it looks a lot closer to like a 3 or something like that. A little bit off center, but the color's good. Corners aren't horrible.
If you off center is common on 65, the 65. Yeah. If it's not diamond cut or tilted, or if you even have a slight border, you're winning, because a lot of them are really bad. Like, they don't have a left or right border, some of them. This is mine.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. That is beautiful.
It's off center. Got a really good, for a 4. I feel like I got a great price on this.
Those corners look great, by the way.
The corners are cut butter. The reason it's a 4 is there's like a couple little dots on the back. I can't even see them now, where there's a little bit of paper loss, like right in here.
Okay.
But they're really tiny. But paper loss is paper loss. There's no creases. Corners are great.
For me personally, I'm willing to give quite a bit on the back of a card. Like, if the card is graded down because the back doesn't look great, that is probably one of my for me, that's one of my favorite things to take advantage of, right? Because, it's not that I completely don't care, but it's like I just don't spend a lot of the time looking at the back of my cards. I know some people do, they read the stats and all that, but that's not me. I look at the picture on the front. So, like this Namath, right? That picture on the front looks really, really good. It got marked down because I'm staining on the back. Look, I feel like I got a steal on that thing. I'll take that all day.
Yeah. You got a really nice Namath for under $2,000. So that's a win. Yeah. Because eye appeal Namaths, you will pay up for eye appeal Namath cards. Yeah. Same with Jim Brown, the 58 Brown, you're going to pay up for, a centered copy where the black of the card is not washed out or fisheyed or any of that stuff. So
yeah, the Brown's tough in terms of the snowing and the centering and everything. I'll show mine a little bit. That one is very, very, very high up on my list of top 10. It's not high grade, but again, it's got flaws that I can live with. And I think that's a big part of the hobby anyways, like setting up your parameters. What can you, I know watching your videos, you're a big centering guy, you want your center, kind of deal with everything else. Yeah. So I'm probably a little bit less picky. There's only a handful of things that really turn me off. And we talked about one of them earlier today. I personally don't like to do, I'll do authentic minimum size, not matte, but I don't like to do authentic altered, trimmed. I don't like MKs a whole lot. I don't like it where the card has writing on it or anything. I have a good friend, a good hobby friend who that doesn't bother him at all, and he gets some great deals because he'll pick up cards with writing on them and stuff like that. For me, it's got to be a pretty. I own, I think, one card with writing on it, and that is a boxing card. I don't have it with me. It's an 1888 Allen and Ginter John L. Sullivan. That has some writing on the back. Whatever, like
Yeah. What are you gonna do?
yeah, like it exists. It's from 1888, so whatever.
I'm with you. You know, I generally stay away from qualifiers, but my Van Brocklin's got an MK qualifier. I've looked at that card way more than I'd like to admit to try to find the mark, and I can't find it. I had somebody reach out to me. He's like, they're usually check the back, and I check the. And if I have to look that hard for it, then whatever.
That's a different deal. Like if you tell me there's an MK and I can't see it, I am perfectly good with that. It's just, where there's visible writing or something like that, I try to stay away from it. But again, I never say never. If it's the right card, the right scarcity, and the right price, rules can be bent here and there. But those are my general sort of guidelines.
Yeah, I want to check something to see if I disabled chat. I want to make sure people can, or maybe people are just being quiet.
I don't even know how to see if we have people in there. So you're the expert on that. When you told me we were doing a live stream, I'm like, man, I hope that Jeremy's got the tech part of this down. All I know how to do is jump on and show cards.
I've got the tech part down, but this is the first one I've ever done. Like, I'm new to this. I'm just, like I've told you, I'm just firing from the hip,
See, but I've been loving it though. I think it's fun. And I think too, like, because I told you this, I've considered starting my own channel before, and it is something that I want to do at some point, but it's like, I have a 2-year-old, it's with work, it's, and it's just very, very challenging to find the time to do it. But I think that in my thinking about trying it, it's like, look, I think you can't lose if you go in doing it for yourself and you're doing something that you enjoy. And it's like, okay, cool. If a handful of other people enjoy this too and comment on it, and it, facilitates some hobby interaction, that's obviously the goal. But I don't think you necessarily need to get, 1,000 or 2,000 followers and have fun with it. I mean, if you do, great. But it's, I think you can have fun with it with just, a handful of people and that are all kind of, wanting to see the same thing. And in your case, man, I love it that you just show cards. I like looking at cards, and that's not always the case with all channels.
I'm not out looking to like have 5K stuff. I don't even know what I'm out. I'm just showing cards off and trying to throw information out and educate on some stuff and show I mean, I love showing pop report stuff because I don't think people.
That's been my favorite part.
Different baseball to football is, like how much less of it there is. And I was talking to my dad about this at the show a couple weeks ago, and to a dealer that I was doing a trade with. I'm like, with as scarce as vintage football is, it won't take much more of a
demand
interest. If the interest jumps, that scarcity, I mean, cards are going to dry up really fast with football. It's not going to take a whole lot. Not that I care. Like, I'm not doing this as an investment. Like, I don't flip. I don't do that crap. I just collect cards. My wife doesn't get it, and I told her, you don't have to get it. Don't worry about it.
My wife is a complete non-sports fan, but she understands some components of the collecting in terms of the connection, because I'm also I think a lot of vintage collectors are. I love history, so this is another way of connecting with that a little bit. But I think the big thing is, right, like she's happy I have something to do, something that makes me happy. So she's supportive in that way, even if it would not be what she would do necessarily with time and money, to be sure.
Yeah, I mean, there are worse things to do with your money,
Definitely. And as hobbies go, right? I mean, and you and I are on the same page, right? Like, I'm not an investor. I'm not trying. And you know what? If that's your thing in the hobby, that's great. Everybody, the hobby's large. There's space for all sorts of stuff, but
Yeah.
that's not me. I don't have any, big thoughts of making millions on this, but I will say, it is pretty cool because you can get, unlike other hobbies, obviously you're buying things that can then be sold and you get some sort of return on investment back. So, it's a nice bonus if the time comes where you ever need to sell them, or, down the line, if you're gone and somebody else wants to do that, they can at least get a little something for it. Nobody's going to get any money that I go out and spend on the bad round of golf I play down here or something like that. That money's just gone.
Exactly.
But I think to your point though, I think some guys have, talked on YouTube about, is vintage football ever going to catch vintage baseball? And I mean, probably not, but do I think vintage football could potentially see a rise in prices in the years to come? Probably, because if you look at what the modern collectors are collecting now, I mean, football is by far the most collected sport in modern cards. It's interesting because, when you start, because I don't do a whole lot of ultra modern, but I do modern stuff in terms of the 90s. When you get into 90s football is right on par, I mean, with, baseball and basketball. Like there's no drop off. And in fact, football a lot of times is even more than baseball for a lot of players. So as people work back, I mean, are they going to start getting a demand for the vintage stuff?
Yeah, I've been buying up some late 90s, early 2000s Topps Chrome
Nice.
because I think once Fanatics gets that license back and starts pumping out licensed Topps Chrome cards, I could see some interest there, and some of the cards I have are going to be unattainable at that point. I don't know.
I'm curious what you've been picking up from that. I'm curious who are you grabbing in that realm?
Like the Mannings, the Mosses. I'm a big Drew Brees fan, so some Drew Brees stuff. Tomlinson.
Okay.
Larry Fitzgerald. Guys like that. Guys who are in the Hall of Fame or who are going to be. Yeah. Refractors. I've actually got a Peyton Manning 2006 Topps Chrome Red uncirculated at SGC right now.
Very nice.
I bought raw, and the listing said it had never been. It's an uncirculated card, and I'm like, all right, whatever. Let's see. And I got it in the hand. I'm like, wow, this thing looks flawless. So I'm really curious.
Nice.
Those grades should be hitting next week, I think. But yeah, I've been buying some of that stuff. I don't. I have some Tua Tagovailoa cards because I love the kid.
Okay.
I'm a fan. But that's the extent of my modern, really.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I love some of that stuff too. And yeah, it does. I didn't know where the discussion was going to go. So I brought out actually my all-time favorite Topps Chrome card right here is this Thunder and Lightning Barry Sanders refractor.
Oh, I remember that.
1997. This is, is it the most valuable Topps Chrome card? Not by a long shot, but it is my favorite. I love that insert set, and Barry's my guy. So that's my all-time favorite card from Topps Chrome. But if you look at some of that stuff, right, like it's, the price differential is not much, and in some cases non-existent when looking at, some of the more modern stuff relative to football, baseball. So you just wonder, at some point, I feel like at least some of these collectors are going to work backwards a little bit and start looking for, the vintage football stuff, since they're into football in the modern realm, looking backward toward that. Is it going to be enough to get it on par where we're looking at, vintage baseball prices where Joe Namath rookie cards going for 15 grand in an SGC one? Probably not. But I do think, it could jump, which again, to you and I, all that probably means to you and I is we're like, okay, we're glad we're getting the cards we are now before that happens.
Honestly, that's why I'm doing. I mean, that's a big reason why, because if vintage football doesn't budge in value, I don't care, like whatever. Yeah. But if it does, I've already got a lot of the stuff I want. That's kind of where I'm at with it. It's never going to catch baseball. I'm not going to say that. No, it has room to grow. I think it does. How much? We'll see. I think, a lot of the guys and girls buying cards now, I don't know how they're affording it, but that's not my problem. But if they still want to collect, they're going to gravitate towards something. You
Yeah.
know, I gravitated towards something. You know, a lot of people gravitate and they work backwards, and they'll find a sweet spot. It could be the 90s, 2000s. It could be the 80s. It could be the 60s. You know, anywhere in between. So I'm curious to see what happens. I think there's a lot of room for growth in vintage football. I really do.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of it. There's a lot of cards out there that are the condition sensitivity of them is insane. I've talked about it on my videos. You know, one of my favorite cards, I'm going to show it in a little bit, is the 56 Lenny Moore. That's impossible to find centered.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The centering is tough.
Impossible. Where it was on the sheet and all that stuff, it's like impossible. And I've got one that looks perfect.
Yours is I can't remember. Yours is it's like a mid grade, but it's dead centered if I remember right.
Yeah, I'm gonna bust it out right now because I love it so much.
Let's see.
It's a 5. For some reason, I don't care.
Oh yeah, that is a beautiful copy of that card, and I can vouch for the fact that is not an easy card to find centered in any grade. I've seen 7s that are far less well centered than that.
Yeah, I mentioned in one of my videos that I still have an eBay search on this thing because I want another one, and I bought this like 2 years ago, and I haven't found one yet. So
yeah, that's a great card.
This is one of my favorites, and Lenny Moore has great cards, by the way.
Well, Lenny Moore is
awesome looking. What's that?
Well, I was going to say he's a guy that was kind of like, you know, for anybody who's not familiar with Lenny Moore, think kind of like LT almost. You mentioned Tomlinson. Lenny Moore was kind of one of those early guys where he could catch the ball out of the backfield. And, you know, before him, there weren't a lot of guys kind of doing that. So Lenny Moore was actually, again, another guy that if you look at, you know, kind of the development of football and offensive game planning, I mean, you look back to a guy like Lenny Moore as one of those early running backs that was coming out of the backfield, you know, making plays. And I think some of those guys get forgotten. Like, you know, another guy when we're talking about Sam Huff is another guy. Sam Huff was essentially the guy in New York that Tom Landry, when he was the defensive coordinator there, built the 4-3 defense around. Yep. You know, who knows if we have the 4-3 defense like we do now, if not for the existence of Sam Huff. So it's like, and how many people sit there and talk about Sam Huff or remember who Sam Huff is? And that goes back to our point. Like, where's the NFL on this? Like, we can highlight these things a little more. Guys like Lenny Moore and Sam Huff, I mean, these are important players.
Yeah. And for anybody watching, Lenny Moore cards are insanely affordable.
Dirt cheap.
And I don't think he has an ugly looking card. I really don't. All his cards are cool looking.
Yeah. That 56 top set in general is a cool set. Man, I didn't bring it down, but I have that Joe Schmidt from that set that I really like as well. Joe Schmidt's one of my Lions guys. He's a good one. But when you talk about condition sensitivity, a couple sets that pop right into my mind right away. You mentioned your Bradshaw 71 tops with those red borders, the chipping there, notoriously tough. And then I actually do have one from the next set I mentioned, 62 tops. These black borders, horrible.
That's Ernie Davis.
That's my Ernie Davis. And I brought that down because, again, I had no idea where any of this conversation would go. That Ernie Davis card is my all-time favorite rookie card of a non-Hall of Famer. And for again, I love that card.
Anybody watching, just go look up the Ernie Davis story. It's something.
Yeah, first African American to win the Heisman Trophy. Unfortunately, passed away before taking a snap in the NFL. But he was going to be with Cleveland, so it was going to be him and Jim Brown in the same backfield. Can you imagine?
Cleveland just churned out running backs like crazy back then. Like just that's 62 tops. It's
tough set,
man. Yeah, I got the Dick. I mean, you start getting into the 6s and 7s on that set, and the money starts coming out of the wallet at that point.
Yeah,
it really does.
And it's because those black borders. It's impossible to find one that doesn't have the chipping on it.
And the backs are like have an orange border, right? An orange is color. Yeah. So thanks, Tom.
As well. So right there. If anybody wants to take a look at that.
Yeah. And they did even better the next year with the 63 borders. So.
Oh yeah, those are tough too. Those
I love that set though. I used to hate
great.
it, and now I absolutely love that set. Finding
Talk
clean copies of cards in that set it's so gratifying.
Talk about a set with some defensive legends, right? That's the Ray Nitschke rookie. That's the Bob Lilly rookie. That's the Deacon Jones rookie. I mean, you talk about some heavy defensive hitters in a set. And yeah, I agree with it. It's a beautiful set. I do not have, I don't think, any high. Oh, there you go. Bob Lilly. That's a, yeah.
Okay, so this is a 3. I think I talked to you about this one on Instagram. It's a 3.5 because there's a little crease like right here.
Other than that, though, that looks more like a 5 or 6.
Yeah, but the rest of it's clean. Tough card. Dallas's first draft pick ever.
Yep, Mr. Cowboy.
Yep.
Yeah, besides Roger Staubach, he was probably like the guy associated with those Cowboys teams of the 70s.
Yep.
But yeah, that's a great set. Yeah, and that's the thing with these vintage football cards. There's, like we said before, some just absolutely amazingly beautiful sets, great looking cards. The condition issues, I mean, you may have to pay up for super high grade, but these cards, like that Lily, right? That's a 3.5. That card looks great. I mean, they it's not like they look, not good in lower grades.
Yeah. I think I mention that all the time. Like, lower grades that have strong eye appeal, that is like my wheelhouse. I love it. Like, I don't even look at the grade number. I really don't. When I'm doing my eBay searches, if I see something shifted way off center in the preview image, I just scroll right past it. I don't look at the grade in the description at all. Centering is my number one thing on newer stuff. Now, there's some cards where, you can't be picky about that, and I'm not. But
we always sort of go at the buy the card, not the grade thing. And I think that's something, that comes with time. Once you start to trust your eye a little bit more, I don't think there's anything. I think I just say this because sometimes I wonder what new collectors are thinking when they hear that. And they're, because at first I was like, oh my God, I can't trust the grade. What am I going to do? How am I going to know what to buy? How am I going to know what to pay? And early on, I just sort of defaulted and I kind of paid for the grade. But, it comes with time, right? The more you look at a card, the more you can look at look at a 2 and look at a 4 and be like, okay, I honestly think that, because remember, it's a technical grade, right? There's certain things like your Bob Lilly is a great example. A 4 cannot have a crease per SGC, right? So 3.5, that's the highest grade they can give it because technically it cannot qualify for a 4. That doesn't mean that it does not look better than, because I actually own that card in a 4, and I think I told you this too. Your 3.5 looks far better than the copy I have of that in a 4. So as time goes on, you learn to trust your eye. I'll show my Jim Brown at some point here shortly, and it's an SGC 2. I thought about upgrading that card, but every time I look at a 3 or a 4, I'm like, is that card a couple $100 or a few $100 better than my 2? I don't think so. I mean, I'll show it and you can tell me what you think, but I personally don't think so.
And that's where the personal preference comes in, right? Because I like you, I do that sometimes where I'm like, do I want to upgrade this? And I'll think about it. I'm like, maybe I should. And then I'll look at it. Yeah, no, I'm good with that.
Yeah,
I have a 48 leaf Sammy Baugh over here that I think about upgrading all the time. And then when I look at it, I'm like, you know what? No, I'm good with what I've got.
Yeah. And it's a choice, right? It's a calculus to where it's like, okay, like you can upgrade your cards. And I have before, I'll show a couple in here that I have upgraded. But it's always a calculus because if you're upgrading that one, yeah, you can sell the one you have to get some money toward it, but you're going to be spending some of your hobby dollars toward functionally buying a card you already have a copy of. Yep. So I like to, I do it, but I pick and choose my spots very carefully because a lot of times that's a choice, right? Between getting a better copy of a card that I already own, or I can go out and get a copy of a card I don't own. And usually probably about 85% of the time I go out and get the card I don't own and I'm like, and just say, okay, I'm fine with that. But not always. There are those moments where it's like, okay, I do want something slightly nicer because of what this card means to me.
What cards have you upgraded? Give me a couple examples.
76 Walter Payton, Topps Walter Payton rookie. I've also upgraded twice now my 57 Topps Johnny Unitas rookie. I upgraded my Chuck Bednarik, 48 leaf Bednarik rookie. It's, it's still an SGC minimum size not met, but one with pretty good eye appeal. The one I had before was, I was kind of telling you the story. There was an example of a card where it was a complete impulse buy. I overpaid for it. And it was in rough shape. I ended up selling it and taking a little bit of a hit. But then I got a really good deal and took another chance buying this raw one that I have now. I was fine when it came back minimum size not met because the eye appeal is still solid. And for those who don't know, minimum size not met just means that quality control in the factory was bad and it wasn't cut to the same size as it should have been. I can live with a factory error for a short print card in 1948, quite frankly.
Exactly.
So,
yep.
Yeah, but that's just me.
Where, that's where having some tolerance for flaws like that, you have to. Cards that are 70, 80 years old, they aren't cut with, laser precision back then. So
you either have to have a tolerance for that or one of two things: extreme patience to wait to get the cards you want and save up for them. That's out the window for me. As my wife can tell you, I'm not a patient person. Every time I see my 2-year-old show a lack of patience, I look at him with all sincerity and say, I'm sorry, because I know where you get that from. So that's out the door for me. I'm not a patient person. The other thing you could have to avoid that is a massive, almost endless budget. Also not something I have. I mean, I feel like my card budget, and I feel like you and I are kind of the same in this regard, Jeremy. I feel like we have a budget that, some collectors would look and say, oh, you spend a lot of money on cards. And, but big time collectors would look and say, oh, well, that's, nice. You're kind of have the chance to buy something, and I'm fine with that. Like I have a collection I love looking at, and that to me, that's all that matters.
It's all about, for me, I stay in my lane, I don't tell other people what to do. You do you, I do me, you do you. It's all good. There's plenty of room in the hobby to do whatever you want to do,
Yeah. And on whatever budget you have, like that's the thing too. If you can buy some great cards for 5, 10, 15, 20 bucks, especially again, vintage football. If you're looking outside of rookies, I mean, you're the player run guy here. You've probably picked up some of those player run cards you have that look really great. You've probably picked some of those up for what, 20 bucks, 25 bucks, something like that. Really nice cards.
I've got a 67 Lance Allworth rated a BVG 7 that I won at auction for $19.
You cannot beat that. You can't beat that.
Well, this comes into what I was talking about a while back. I did a video on, I've been buying a lot of Beckett slabs.
Yeah, I saw that.
People weren't buying Beckett, but a few years ago, Beckett and PSA were, right? There's nothing wrong with a Beckett slab. To me,
my Lily and my Ditka are Beckett
7, 8 years ago. That's a great slab to have. And I can get it at a discount, sure.
Yeah,
so
I'm the same way. I mean, it's totally on the same wavelength there. I only send to SGC, but I'm happy to buy again. My Lily and my Ditka are two of my most notable Beckett cards, and I love those cards. I was able to get higher grades. I have the Ditka in a 5, the Lily in a 4, because I did not go PSA or SGC.
Yeah, and they probably look just as good.
The Ditka does. The Lily, it's probably a bit overgraded, but you can have that just as easily in PSA or SGC as well. But the Ditka, I think it is a very solid 5. I wish I'd have brought it out here, but it's a very solid 5.
Yeah, again, grading, it's subjective. It's humans doing it. Well, I don't think it's totally humans doing it, but
there's tech assistance now. I don't know. I know that's a big topic of hobby conversation these days, and I think to a certain extent, rightfully so. But I don't know enough about the man behind the curtain, so to speak, to really say, hey, it should be this, it should be that. I have my theories. And the more I send cards off for grading and get them back with SGC, the more I am closer in my guesses as to what grade they're going to come back as. Mm-hmm. But I'm far from a grading expert. I know I like SGC because they have good customer service, and I think their slabs look great. Quite frankly, those are my biggest things.
100%. And they're only a couple hours for me. So, well, you're in Florida too, yeah?
Yeah, I'm in Tampa. I think you and I are like an hour apart or something, hour and a half. I want to go to that Orlando show, that Apopka show down there one day. So maybe we actually have to plan that out at some point.
Yeah, they actually there was a couple more vintage dealers there last time, which was nice. because it's mainly, you know, it's mostly modern, but there's a few good vintage guys there. So
I mean, for the short drive down the way, I'm willing to check it out. I think shows are just fun anyway.
oh yeah, yeah. The only issue we have that building gets hot after a while because it was super packed and it got hot in there. So my dad and I just said, I picked up my bought my Ditka and my I think it was a Bart 62 Bart Star. Bought those and left and went and grabbed a beer with my dad. Called it a day. But yeah, it's a good time.
That's a productive show.
I wish there were more shows in Central Florida and Tampa than there are, but we don't have like we don't have like a Strongsville or a Dallas or anything like that.
In Chicago, we had, because I moved here from Chicago in July, we had the Sports Spectacular there every year, and that was a really nice, like, sort of, yeah, not national level show, but it was a big show. There was a ton of good stuff there, so that was, I missed that a little bit.
Well, I've never been to a national. I've never been to a Strongsville. I might try to do Strongsville next year. We'll see. It's just, is it worth it? You know, I've watched videos on it and I've heard it's a great show, but it's small. And I don't really know how much they're going to have there that's going to interest me for the trip, you know?
Yeah, I don't know much about Strongsville. I know if you were a vintage baseball guy, I know I from what I hear and what people say, it would probably be worth it. Vintage football, I've heard some kind of mixed reviews from people I know that have gone. I mean, the National last year, I thought that was a worthwhile trip. You need to spend some days there, though, because your first day is just going to be in there being overwhelmed trying to get the lay of the land. But the National was definitely a good experience in terms of what you can pick up there.
Yeah, I'll have to do it one of these days.
Yeah, you should. You definitely should at some point.
What's that?
You definitely should at some point. It's if nothing else, it's a cool experience as a collector. You get to meet a lot of people. You're doing YouTube now. There's a YouTube gathering there, and I got to meet a lot of people from the YouTube community there last year. And there's some really legitimately cool people. At least the ones I met. I mean, I know that probably not everybody within the community is super cool, but the folks I met were really, really good people.
No, I think mostly the people are fine. They're good. You know,
that's been my experience as well.
Yeah. I haven't met anybody that's been a jerk or anything like that.
Same. But I feel like we've been teasing people with these top 10 cards for an hour now. What do you think?
Yeah, I've shown, let me see, one. I've shown the Lily, the Moore, the Namath, and the Grange. And, okay, so I've shown like 4 or 5 of mine.
I think I've shown one. I've shown 2. I've shown the Namath and the Grange. The only question is order. I'm curious what order you have all those in.
I've got no order. So go ahead. I've got football, and then I got 2 wild cards that I'll explain to people at the end. But go for it. I want to see what you got.
So I cheated a little bit here because I still, after owning both of these cards for over a year now, I can't decide which of these I'm putting in number 10, whether it's my 57 Bart Starr rookie or this 48 Leaf Bednarik rookie. I just tie him at 10.
That Chuck looks great.
I've got to tell you, I know it's not a numerical grade, but it looks a lot better than a lot of the ones in 1.5s I've seen, which is why I'm not in any rush to upgrade it.
I wouldn't be either. That's gorgeous.
So yeah, I am very happy with that card and the star. I mean, it's a short print from that 57 set. Love that set. Love that card. So I can't kick either one off the list. So this is one that probably wouldn't be on most people's list, but it's on my list because I love National Chickle, 35 Chickle, which was the first nationally distributed pro football set, and I'm a Lions fan, so I got to throw Dutch on there. This is my favorite card I own from that Chickle set, and it's a gorgeous set, and this is kind of the first Detroit Lions legend.
Card number 1, right? That's card number 1 in the set.
That's card number 1 in the set. That's right, card number 1 in the set. So that one, to me, that's my number 9 card. I love that card to death. My favorite Chickle that's not Nagurski. So now number 8, I've already shown it. It's the Namath. I know that's probably lower than most people would have it. But the player for me, I know I think you and I probably feel a little bit differently on Namath the player. I love the card. I love the legend of Joe Namath. I think, you can't disrespect that card too much because Namath was not, maybe putting up some of the numbers of other guys. But I do ding him, I think, a little bit for that. And just aesthetically, I like 65 tops, but not as much as a couple of the cards I put in front of it. Because I do have a couple other quarterbacks I do put ahead of him that maybe others wouldn't. But for me, that's my Slingin' Sammy at number 7. A little bit off center, but the color on this card, I really, really love it for the grade. It's a PSA 2, but I think the color is good, and he has a Bowman rookie too. But I think the Leaf's the one to have, and that's the one that I like a little bit more myself.
I agree with you on that one. Yeah.
Now this one's an example I think that you'll probably enjoy because it's a lower grade card from a great set, and it's almost dead centered. And that is my number 6 card, my 50 Bowman autogram. My favorite card from my favorite set. It's hard to argue with that. And I just love the way this card looks. I think it's a really nice looking 3.5.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
I took a chance on this. I bought this raw for $200 a couple years ago, graded out a 3.5. So that's one where
that's a win.
I took a risk and it paid off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that one. So that's number 6. Top 5. This is my Peyton that I've upgraded the Peyton twice now. I had a minimum size not met that I bought raw and I sent off, and I wasn't okay with minimum size not met for a card from 1976.
Sure. Yep.
I ended up owning a BVG 5.5, but I didn't like the eye appeal and worked my way into this last year, this SGC 6.
Great card.
So this next one is the only non-PSA or SGC slab that I'm going to show, but I got a heck of a deal on this thing. It's a little bit beat up, but it is nevertheless a 33 Sport Kings Jim Thorpe rookie card.
Yeah, that is on my list. I love that card.
I love this card. It's in a CGC slab. It's got a little tear kind of like right there. It doesn't go all the way through the card, but it's a little bit of a rip. That's why it's authentic. It's not trimmed or anything like that. I know the guy I got this from. I traded him a Bowman paper Tom Brady rookie, and I think it was a Beckett 7.5 plus I think $75 cash for that Tom Brady or that Thorpe. I mean, that's about that ends up being about the equivalent of about $650 to get that. So I'll take that.
Well, that, and you can pick up another Brady like now.
Yes,
you wanted it,
yeah.
Right?
I haven't seen another Thorpe in my price range come up since I got this a year ago. Like
there was,
as you know.
There was a Thorpe that hit the other day, and it was beat to hell. It was bad.
And that's the thing, right? Like this does have the little bit of a tear. It's an authentic, but I've seen some other ones in authentics that look much, much worse and are priced much, much higher than what I got.
The one that hit last week, it looked like it had been.
I know which one you're talking about. It looks like it had been run over by a
lawn. Up in a snow pile and dried out. It was
tough.
It was bad.
But hey, but the problem with it isn't that for me. It's like it is priced really high. I think it's 4 figures. It's like, no, like if you're selling that for $600-700, somebody will pick it up to own the card. But man, that's not, you can't, I don't know about 4 figures on one in that.
Right. Like it's opportunity cost. If it was a feeder, but it was like $450, $500.
Yeah. Oh yeah, all day.
But you're asking over $1,000 for it. I'm out.
No, same, 100%. And on that Sport King set, this is my number 3. We've already shown that one, the Grange. The reason that one outranks the Thorpe is this one looks better, quite frankly. I think if I had similar looking copies of each one, I'd rank the Grange a little higher. This one, number 2, the Johnny U rookie. It's not a scarce card, but it's an iconic card. And man, I just love his look in that picture. You got the crew cut. Just feels like this card represents an era, right? Like it represents an era of football. Upgraded that one a couple times, and I am very happy with the 4 I have now.
That card's sneaky. The registration on some of those is really, really bad.
I owned one that fit that description, which is why I wanted to move up on it. So number 1, probably by now, seems like it's pretty obvious to me. This is the greatest football card ever made. It is the 58 Topps Jim Brown, and that's my 2. Look at the centering on that thing.
Yeah.
There is a microscopic wrinkle right about here on this card. And if not for that, this is probably about a 3.5. I just don't see a need to upgrade out of it. The eye appeal on it's great. The card looks awesome, and save that money for something else. I mean, I'm all day gonna take that one.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like the eye appeal is outstanding. That for people who don't know, the Jim Brown rookie, what would you say? 3 out of 4 off center, like 80-20?
That's why when I saw this one at a 2 price, I jumped all over it because it's like I mean, you look at 3s and 4s, they are not centered that well most of the time.
Yep. Correct.
So that's my top 10.
That's a heck of a top 10, Justin, I tell you. Mine's not going to be as impressive, but
I doubt that somehow.
Let me see. How should I put these? Because I showed some of them already, so we're going to recap those. So let's see. Let me try to get these in order real quick. Number 10 is probably going to be this one. I've already shown it.
There we go.
And just because it's a 2 at arm's length that looks like a 6. It doesn't have, I've mentioned this in the video, 51 Bowman, football and baseball, oftentimes have a print line going across the front.
Mm-hmm. My Landry does.
Yeah, the Tunnel, just about every card in the set has that. And that happens in the baseball set too. The Whitey Ford rookie, which I own, oftentimes has that too. So they must have used the same print. I don't know how they made them back then, but same.
That's
printer.
interesting. I didn't know that about baseball.
Yeah, it's on the same. Yeah, I got to save those. Those are my wild cards. So the Lily I showed.
Yep. It's a gorgeous.
It's in my top 10 just because of the eye appeal and what I paid for it and all that. So I haven't shown this yet. I've done a video on it though. This is the card that started it all.
Boy, that color on that looks fantastic. That is a good looking copy of that card.
Yeah, and it cost me nothing. I traded 2 Bowman Chrome baseball player autos for it.
Ridiculous. That's a huge card. I mean, that is a, massive card in the vintage football. Of course, Terry Bradshaw. I mean, that's great. Yeah. I like 71 tops. I know not everybody does, but I think it's a fun set.
It's a really fun set. And it's got, I think, 9 Hall of Fame rookies in that set?
It's a lot. Yeah, that Bradshaw and Mean Joe are kind of the headliners.
All right, I'm going to show this one next. This is kind of going to surprise some people. The 52 Bowman Large Frank Gifford. This is graded, what is it, a 2? This is a 2.
That's a beautiful 2.
It's a gorgeous 2. And it deserves a 2. It's got a crease going through his armpit. Probably won't be able to pick it up on here.
Yeah, but I can't see it.
Exactly, you can't see it. And I paid a 2 price for it. I love this card. Frank Gifford was the heart and soul of the Giants back in the 50s, early 60s. Did Monday Night Football for a long time.
That's what's huge about Frank Gifford. We grew up with him on TV, right? For me, it was him, Al Michaels, and Dan Deerdorf every Monday when I was a kid. So yeah, I love that card too. If I were to do a top 20, that would absolutely be kind of in that next tier down for me. I have a 2 as well, only it's an SGC slab, but I love that card as well.
And the centering is pretty perfect on it.
So, dead on, yeah.
Yeah. 52 Bowman Large, as you know. Awful centering. Awful.
Yes. Great set, though.
Next up.
There you go.
57 Bart Star. And yes, it's a 2.5. It doesn't look like a 2.5.
Looks a lot better than my 2.5. The centering on my 2.5 is horrendous.
The reason for the 2.5, and if I hold it in the right light, there's a crease.
Anytime you have to say when I hold it in the right light, I feel like right there, it's like, all right, this is no big deal to me.
Yeah, it's between the nameplate and my fingernail. There's a crease going through there.
I mean, when you got to get the magnifying glass out to see it, you're good. I mean, really.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the biggest things, right? If you're looking for value, like we've said, like that's the way to go. Is like cards like that where they're technically graded something for a reason, but they still look great. That's the way to go.
That's where I'm at. That's my wheelhouse for sure.
Same.
Showed this already. I will gladly show it again. This is top 5 for me in my collection. Because I know how hard these are to find centered. It's been 2 years. I haven't found another one in any grade. So, yeah.
And that's 56 tops in general. Very, very tough on centering. I wish I'd have brought my Joe Schmidt out here because I have a pretty well centered Joe Schmidt. My Lenny Moore is typical for that set. Mine is pretty off center. I think it's a 3, but it does not look anything like that in terms of quality.
But you have one.
Yeah, and I love the card. I think I got it for $40, so I can't complain about it.
Exactly. A little bit of overlap because I have this one too.
Go. You can't leave that one off if you own it. I feel like that is just that 48 leaf set, so iconic, great cards, and that's the headliner.
Yeah, I've got there's some registration issue on that one. There's some whiting on the blue.
It's dead centered though.
But the centering is
spot on.
Right there. All right, the next 2 I've already shown, but we'll show them again.
Yep, more overlap. Boy, that in a 4, that's just gorgeous.
Yeah, this was an opportunity purchase for sure. I normally wouldn't have shelled out the money, but I don't know. It just sort of worked out.
But the thing with the 65 Namath is somebody's always going to want one too. So if there ever is a situation where you need to get rid of it, that's probably one of the most liquid cards in any vintage football collection. Somebody's always going to want a 65 Namath.
Yep, the Namath, the Star, the Brown, the Unitas, the Ball. Yeah,
very liquid.
Yeah, I showed this already, as did you. I think you and I I think your card is like my card's brother.
I thought the same thing when you showed it. I can't remember if it was an Instagram or on your channel. I'm like, boy, ours are real close in terms of eye appeal for that. Pretty good looking PSA 1s. I'm very happy with my copies. I'm sure you are yours. I'm more than fine with that for that card.
I'm not upgrading this at all.
No, because once you get into 2s, you're talking about $2,000 anyway.
Yeah, and it's not going to do it for me. I'd rather spend that money on something else.
100%.
When you see this, you're probably going to be like, oh, yep, I get it. This is a recent pickup. Impossible to find these centered. One of my favorite players of all time.
You're building this up. I want to see. There we go. Yep. I love that one. Yeah. Yep. You showed that on your channel. That's another one where it was like, yeah, that is phenomenal. That card
is so hard.
Tough
to find. It's tough to find 60-40, let alone this is it's close to 50-50s I've seen.
Yeah, I don't know that I've seen one that well centered. That especially, if you're talking about below a 7 or something. But yeah, that is a huge card. I've got mine too, just for some context. Mine's a 4. It's not that far off yours grade wise, but look at that centering compared to yours. Mine is like way off left to right. Just to give some context here for how impressive it is that you found that centering in a 5.
It took a lot of patience. There were a couple times where I almost bought one that was a little off. Like, I'm probably not going to find one like this, but I waited.
So with mine, I actually traded like a Jackson Churio blue shimmer that I happened to have. Was a baseball player for the Brewers, and a couple Josh Allen and Justin Herbert cards. And I got these 2 cards raw. And this is how they graded out. So that's the ultimate trade that I won. It was with a guy who manages the local LCS, the card shop where I used to live in Chicago, and that was a good trade for me.
So if anybody's watching, that right there is how you do it. That is how that's a good way to start building a really good vintage football nerd collection right there. Trade the modern stuff and trade into it. You can always get the modern stuff back.
Always. Yeah. It's hard.
Some of the vintage stuff, like something like this, centered like that, I won't see this again for a while.
63 Fleer in general is a tough set. It's tougher than I think I realized coming in. Like even just finding a decent, not even like yours is amazing, but finding even a decent looking copy of Allworth or Dawson, I mean, it takes time. It's tough. Yeah. So, that's a deceptively tough set to get your hands on those rookies.
Yeah, I think that one, I think every card in that set is prone to borderline miscut.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to show two more. These are not football, but I want to explain. They kind of lead into an explanation on my journey into vintage.
Got it.
This is the first vintage card I ever bought.
Oh, very nice.
I bought this at my local card shop when I was 14 years old, raw. I put it on layaway. I don't know if anybody knows what layaway is, but layaway is when
I do.
You let the store hold it and you make payments every week. You go in with your paper out money like I did, and then there was no interest or anything. I just paid it off. It was $150.
Boy, talk about $150. Boy, talk about something that's gone up. That's a good return.
Yeah. And then I got it graded like this. I think I got this graded in like 1999. It's an old flip, but
still though,
it's a 5.5.
That's amazing.
One of my favorite players, when I was a kid, like everybody loved Nolan Ryan. He was a freak.
Not Jerry Koosman? You weren't going to go with Jerry Koosman as your favorite player?
Rookie. Yeah, it's the Koosman rookie.
That talk about iconic, Jeremy. That's awesome. That is like wow.
This is the one that I'll never get rid of. My daughter can do whatever she wants with it when I croak.
That's cool.
Yeah, I've had this for 36 years, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. It's made a few moves too, and it survived. And then this card is very tough. It's actually I used it to create my logo of my channel. It is the 33 DeLong Lefty Grove. Lefty Grove, if you don't know, is the greatest left-handed pitcher of all time. If you don't believe me, go look it up. People will say Koufax. People will say, Randy Johnson. It's arguable, but Lefty Grove by stats was the best ever.
What year was that?
1933, DeLong.
See, that's what's awesome about baseball. And one of the reasons I got into boxing is because I wanted to scratch the itch without paying the money for it. Pre-war stuff just is really, really neat. Like you're holding something from the 30s. I mean, you're holding something like 100 years old. And we have some of that in vintage football. We've showed some of that, but there's not much of it. With baseball, that is one thing about baseball that I think is really cool. Is just cards just like that. I'd never seen that card before, but that is such a cool looking card. I mean, I feel like they really did a good job with cards in the early 20th century as well. They just designed very artistic.
This set's really tough. You've probably heard of 33 Gaudy.
Yes.
So he's got a card in 33 Gaudy. Most people consider that his quote unquote rookie card, but this one's a lot tougher to find and looks a lot better. I just love the colors of this. He's there's only 2 horizontal cards in the set. He's one of them, obviously. I just love it.
That's awesome.
I live near the town of Groveland, Florida. Lefty Grove was my favorite vintage pitcher, pre-war pitcher. That's kind of how I came about my channel name. It's kind of dumb, but that's kind of how it all came about.
So I pieced together the Groveland part because I know where Groveland, Florida is, and I know that you told me you live right around here. So I'm like, yeah, that's got to be Groveland. But yeah, that's an interesting tie-in because I've heard of Lefty Grove, obviously, but wasn't sure if you were connected to him, the player, or just kind of thought that was kind of a cool name based on where you live. But I'm glad you showed that card because I actually didn't know that story. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So yeah, that's cool card, kind of a background. The first vintage card was Nolan Ryan. I collect some vintage baseball. Most of it's pitchers. I think pitchers are underrated. They're kind of like the vintage football, the baseball hobby. Really? Yeah. They're really underpriced. I don't get it. And I don't know. I have something about left-handed pitchers that are dominant. I just have a thing for them. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I have one vintage baseball card, and it's funny you mentioned 33 Gowdy because I own a 33 Gowdy Earl Combs, who was a Hall of Famer for the Yankees. The reason I own that card is because he was like my granddad's third cousin or something like that. And
really.
yeah, so and my mom actually he passed in the 70s, so before I was born. But my mom like met him at family reunions, and my granddad always talked about what a nice guy he was. So I got an opportunity to buy a low grade copy of that one. I jumped on it. So that's the only vintage baseball card I know I own. And I get my kind of kicks for really early 20th century stuff through boxing because, boy, you think vintage football is cheap, vintage boxing to pick up super iconic stuff, unless it's really, really rare. That's a cool avenue to pick up some
I've
really.
seen some of your posts on Instagram. You've got some really awesome stuff for boxing. I love seeing those pictures.
It's fun because it is so cheap to pick up stuff where you're like, wow, this is from 1901, this is from 1888, this is from 1890,
Yep.
1910, 1908. It's like you're just of important figures. Again, this isn't a vintage boxing discussion, but man, Google guys like Jack Johnson or Joe Gans or George Dixon or John L. Sullivan, and it's like when you talk about guys that at the time were just these big figures in American sport. I mean, they rival baseball players and in some cases early on surpassed them. So it's,
Yeah.
I guess the tie-in would be there's a lot of cool ways to get into, this hobby and in vintage collecting specifically. I mean, I think that, rightfully so, because it's the kind of, I think, the heart of the hobby in some ways. You see a lot of vintage baseball cards out there on YouTube. And that gives the impression that it's hard to get into vintage collecting. But like you said, even within vintage baseball, there's avenues you can take to get involved. Even within pre-war vintage baseball, there's ways you can get involved cheaply. But man, talk about, like vintage football, vintage boxing. I mean, there's ways to get into vintage collecting that don't break the bank. And by the way, you can pick up some really cool stuff of some really important sports figures.
Yeah. Anybody looking, you bring up a great point. Like you don't have to jump into the four major sports to get into vintage, just boxing. There's political cards, there's Americana stuff. There's a bunch of different things. I know 32 US these are super expensive, but like 32 US Caramel has some like president cards. There's just so much you can get into.
There's this guy I follow on Instagram called Collector Not Hoarder, and he has just some really, really, really cool. I've never met him. I'm not. This isn't. I don't know anything about him other than he has an awesome collection of non-sports cards. He does some boxing. That's kind of how we've interacted a bit, but man, and then if you ever watch Breakout Cards with Ryan Nolan, he's got a really cool collection of non-sports cards. So yeah, I mean, now we said we'd go down rabbit holes. Now we've really gone down a rabbit hole, going completely into non-sport cards. But I think it speaks to the point, right? This hobby's broad. There's a lot of cool stuff out there that maybe people don't know about, whether that's within, vintage football or, even thinking more broadly outside of, like you said, I think that's a great point, outside of kind of the big four. There's a lot of cool stuff out there if you're looking to kind of scratch that vintage itch, so to speak. A lot of ways to enter.
And I think that the big thing that's hard to do is don't go clout chasing. Don't go trying to keep up with everybody else. Find a lane and stick to it. It's the most fun thing ever. There's so many in football, the 70s. There's so many cool cards from 70 to 79.
Mm-hmm.
They're super cheap, super cheap. It's crazy. Staubach's and Zonka and Franco Harris and Terry Bradshaw, Bob. I mean, there's a ton of guys, and they're cheap.
And I think along those lines, one thing I know, we've drone down for almost an hour and a half here, so I know we're probably testing. Yeah, I can't believe it. I looked when it was at the hour mark. I'm like, we have not been going for an hour. So time flies talking about this stuff. For me, I know that, but there's only really two rules I go by in my hobby journey. This is just me. And number one is having the card is better than not having the card. I mean, I love to, if it's low grade, like we said about the Grange or, whatever, it's like, I have it. The Thorpe, I have it. Is it high grade? No, but owning it's better than not owning it. And then if you love looking at the cards you have, you're doing it right. Whatever that means to you. If you go in and love to look at your cards, don't feel like you have to collect a certain way, do a certain thing, spend a certain amount of money on your collection. It's all about when you go in there to wherever you're storing your cards, do you like to go in and look at what you have?
Yeah, I had to buy another storage box for my George Blanda cards. So,
dude, you marched yourself right down a huge rabbit hole on that one. It's a cool rabbit hole and probably not a very expensive one, but you're going to be chasing for a while on that.
Not, but I made the correlation like George Blanda. All right, so Walter Payton broke Jim Brown's rushing record, right?
Yeah.
George Blanda started his career before Jim Brown, and he ended his career as Walter Payton was starting his. That's how long that dude was around.
Bananas. I mean, I think the cigarettes and beer gave him longevity. I think that was the key to his existence.
There's some cards where he's like 44 years old. He looks like he's in his 60s.
Yeah, yeah. He didn't age well, but man, he kept kicking. Man, he made a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, first ballot too.
Yeah. So, man, that's cool. I love seeing those player runs you're doing, and yeah, I mean, I love what you're doing with the channel. I love seeing the cards, and
I appreciate it.
Really enjoyed the fact you let me come on here and scratch my own itch to kind of do a bit of this stuff and show some cards and hang out. So I had a blast.
Yeah, this is more of like an intro, like just shoot the breeze, talk about it. I'd like to do it again at some point, maybe more card focused and less, getting to know us and just, I don't know, focus on a set or a player or two or whatever and just show some cards off.
I am all in for that. Yeah. That's right up my alley.
Awesome. Well, it's been 90 minutes. Anybody still watching this?
Yeah, you get like a double gold star for that. We've really drawn on here, but I've had a ton of fun, Jeremy, and it's just love the channel, love what you're doing, and this is the first time we really talked, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you, seeing some of your cards, and hopefully we can do it again. Yeah,
and you're only like an hour away from me, so we're gonna have to meet up at one of these shows or meet up somewhere, figure it out.
Yeah, we have to definitely do that, man. I'd love to hang out, catch a show. I think it'd be a good time, man.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Justin. Thanks for showing me and everybody else your awesome cardboard. I'm jealous of a lot of it. We'll show some more in a couple weeks.
Sounds great, man. Looking forward to it. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, man. Take care.
Talk soon.
So long, everybody.
Bye, everyone.